Thanks for joining us on the NBC Connecticut YouTube page. I'm Mike Heideck, talking face to facts with Holly Sullivan, the brand new president of the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. We're talking about gun safety and legislation. And as she leads her organization, she's the first woman to ever lead the organization. And you told me earlier that you're the only woman in the country right now
leading a state-level Pro-2A group.
Yeah.
There are women's groups, but I'm currently the only state level from what I understand. Yep.
One of the things that your organization does is it tries to support gun owners and legislation when it comes in the state of Connecticut. You actually hold workshops so gun owners can learn how to talk to legislators. What happens at these workshops?
So really, we make sure that people understand the process. And we want to make sure that they understand, how do you get in touch with your representative? You know, we frequently hear that they're the lawmakers. No, they represent you. They represent your district, your interests, and the folks in your community. So if there's something that's happening in Hartford that you don't agree with, we're there to teach you not how to lobby them. We're not a lobbyist organization. We're here to teach you how to be a participant in democracy, right? And that's what this is about. So it's about letter writing. How do you approach them? What kinds of things do they find valuable information? So we host these legislative workshops where people can just say, hey, you know, I'm maybe not a gun owner, but I'm worried about the Second Amendment. Maybe they're seeing some things that are going on today that they have concerns about, and they just want to know better, how do I get involved and how do I be heard?
One of the things that Connecticut is known for, a long history of firearms, building them here, building ammunition here, both for citizen use and the military as well, over the years of our state's been in existence. One of the things our state was first to do in the country was to adopt the red flag law that happened at the lottery after the lottery shooting. I think it was back in 1999. Since then, only 2 or 3 other states have adopted a red flag law, but most recently, though, back in 2019. Why do you think so few states have adopted it, and what changed maybe in the last couple of years where a couple like Colorado and a couple of other states decided to adopt it?
So I think there's a couple, there's 2 different types of laws. There's the risk warrant law, right? And that one has been in existence for a long time. And then we recently got like red flag laws with ex parte orders, and I'll kind of explain a little bit of the difference kind of in layman's terms.
So the red flag, just to make sure I'm understanding it right, a red flag law is when authorities have a reasonable suspicion that somebody may harm themselves or someone else with a gun. They have an opportunity through the courts to seize the guns. Is that how it works?
So under a risk warrant, which we've had in Connecticut for quite a long time, the individual still has the right to due process, where they can stand before a judge and a judge makes a decision where they can actually weigh it and say you are a risk and your firearm should not be in your possession or not. Under what became our ex parte risk warrant change with a more recent legislation is when somebody files a restraining order or something like that, they can check a box and the police have the opportunity to go in and take the firearms without that person being able to stand before a judge first. And that's a major concern in this state because people in different communities can be targeted for many different reasons. And we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to have due process and to be heard by the court.
In addition to having your workshops and helping people understand how they can talk to their legislator, one of the other things you do is you track bills in the state. One of the bills CCDL is concerned about is safe storage of a pistol in a vehicle or a firearm in a vehicle. Is it written poorly, or you don't think it should be a problem at all, that a gun should be sitting on the seat and that's okay? Like, what's the...
Well, I mean, we have a major problem in this state with car vandalisms and thefts, right? It's happened at my house where it is a chronic problem. If you go on social media today, there's probably not a town where somebody's complaining that somebody wasn't in their car that night. So when you actually have a small safe, it is an easier target for a smash and grab. If they see a small black box, what is likely in that box? Versus if something is well concealed and it's up to your own determination of how you want to care for that. You know,
a black box could be hidden, though. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be out in the open to somebody look through the window.
It doesn't have to be. There's nothing in the law that says that it has to be a hidden box. So there's a lot of concerns about it becoming even more susceptible to smash and grabs because it's a little bit more identifiable as to what might be in there. You know, we've certainly had situations. I was in a car accident and my metal safe went and hit me on the impact, and that actually caused more harm than I would have had. So
and maybe it should be something that's out of sight and it's adhered to the vehicle itself so it doesn't slide.
I mean,
is that possible?
I think at the end of the day,
common sense wise,
you know, at the end of the day, I don't think that it is necessarily the government's scope to continue to tell law-abiding folks what they should be doing within their own property, to be quite frank with you. I think the vast majority of stolen guns, things like that, there's a lot of black market trade that's happening in cities and urban communities. And yes, there are absolutely cases where a firearm can be stolen out of a car. And I will tell you what happened in the last session is there was an amendment offered to that bill that said, at the very least, let's make the penalty harsher for the thief than the gun owner who left the gun in the car. And it failed. So we have a major problem in this state for, when we talk about common sense, common sense has to go both ways, right? So is it fair and just that as a law-abiding gun owner, if I was put in a position where maybe I have to run into the post office, cannot bring a firearm into the post office, so maybe I park in the parking lot next door, I have to get this in for work, it is what it is, leave my firearm in the car, somebody breaks in and steals my property, my penalty is harsher than the thief. Why is that acceptable in this state?
So last question before you go. One of the things that we've talked about before is that gun ownership and ammunition ownership is a very sensitive issue here in Connecticut and in many states that have endured mass shootings. One of the things when this conversation comes up, however, is that both sides are very, very rigid. And it seems it can be hateful speech that goes back and forth between both groups. Is there something we can do to sort of ratchet down the rhetoric and hopefully come to some common sense solutions for both sides?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to first and foremost see each other as human beings. And I think one of the things that's always very hard for me is I'm the mom, I'm a single parent of a 6-year-old first grader. When we talk about Sandy Hook, I live in Southbury, right on the Sandy Hook border, it hits home for me. That empathy is not lost on us. We just have a different way of going about how we think we should prevent it. So I think both sides, to some degree, it's easier to vilify somebody and not see them as human beings than it is to come to the table, sit down and talk about what's real, what's not real, what's myth, and maybe we can actually have a dialogue. But I think it really does start with a degree of humanity to see each other as just people with different opinions on how to get there.
Holly Sullivan, President of Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Thanks for joining us on Face the Facts.
Thank you.
This is Face the Facts with NBC Connecticut.